TEFAF Maastricht, or the European Fine Arts Fair in Maastricht, Netherlands, is one of the most significant annual events in the arts world, particularly because they showcase authentic old masters' works for sale. There are many important European artists represented here dating to the Northern Renaissance. Since we are here in the Netherlands, there are plenty of works by the major Dutch masters, as well as works by many notable impressionists. So in this tour of TEFAF 2025, we'll focus on historic European art. We'll keep the focus on the historic European art. If you would like to see other types of art, then check out the 2 other focus tour videos linked in the description. Alright, here's the first old masterwork, The Apotheosis of Venus and Diana by the Mannerist painter Lorenzo Sabatini of Bologna. The Richard Green Gallery from London has some good European paintings, like this small John Constable. Here's a view of the River Maas, the same river that passes right through Maastricht, up in the harbor of Delfshaven by Simon de Vlieger from 1638. That is a work by Pieter Brueghel the Younger. It is a scene from 1625 of peasants feasting and merrymaking in a village. This picture looks like something his father, Pieter Brueghel the Elder, could have done. Here's a still life of flowers by Willem van Elst, a meticulous Dutch painting. He was a skillful artist known for his refined still lives. His career took him to Paris, Florence, and later settling in Golden Age Amsterdam. There are plenty of Impressionist paintings here, including one by Henri Marton on the right. This is an Alfred Sisley river scene. Just look at the reflection on the water. Here's a depiction of the house of the artist Suzanne Valadon in Montmartre by the pointillist anarchist Maximilien Luce. That house is now the Musée de Montmartre. Here's a late Renoir from 1916. He at one point boarded in that house in Montmartre. There's yet another Chagall. This has a goat and a bouquet of flowers. The goat serves as a nostalgic symbol of Jewish folklore and his childhood in Russia. That's a typical Eugene Boudon seaside scene at the basin of Fécamp. Here's a work by a lesser known but quite interesting French modernist, Auguste Urban. It's a more so Fauves scene from 1907, but he would move on to Cubism and geometric abstraction. It is juxtaposed by some Henri Fontaine-Latour flowers. He was the most celebrated flower painter of 19th century France. That's a classic Boudon beach scene at Trouville. He is best known for his Normandy seascapes. Here is a dazzling sea slate of a dam at the confluence of a canal and the river Seine. Here is a depiction of some chaumières, or thatched cottages, at Auvers-sur-Oise by Camille Pissarro. Well before Vincent Van Gogh famously stayed and died there, Pierre Pissarro and Paul Cézanne stayed in the small village north of Paris. I really like this Renoir depiction of a woman on a trail in the sunny south of France. His more abstracted, colorful latter works are tremendous. This is a work by Pieter Brueghel the Elder's other artist's son, Jan Brueghel the Elder. It is a landscape with travelers from 1606. Here's another incredible Dutch still life, this one by Willem Claus Heda. In between these 2 flower still lives, there's a glorious French scene of the Grand Cascade at Tivoli. And lastly, in the Richard Green Gallery, there's an idyllic painting by an American Impressionist, Edward Cuquel of San Francisco, who spent much of his career in Germany. That's a bizarre bust of Bacchus done in the late 17th century. There's another Judith holding the head of Holofernes. This version was done in 1620 by Giovanni Lanfranco. Here's a still life of fruit and flowers with a ham by Jan Davids de Heem, one of my favorites of the old Dutch masters. And here's a Jan Hackert scene of a 17th century hawking party where they go hunting with falcons. The Weiss Gallery from London specializes in historical portraiture, and they've got some interesting portraits. Nicolas Lanier, pictured here playing the lute, has an extraordinary story. He became King Charles I's master of the king's music, and also got put in charge of collecting art for the royal collection. That is, until the king lost his head in the Civil War. This is an elegant 1625 portrait of the Lady Anne Lawley, painted in the year she became engaged to a merchant adventurer. Here the portraits of a father and son have been reunited after 140 years apart. The father was a city regent of Amsterdam. These are three English noble siblings as children in the early 1600s. One would go on to be the Earl of Derby, another the Countess of Amcram. This is a portrait done by Mary Beale, one of Britain's first professional female artists. She financially supported her whole family through her painting career, back when there was just a very small band of women painters in London. Here's a portrait of a young Louis-Philippe Joseph II, the future Duke of Orleans. He was one of the wealthiest men in France at the time of the Revolution, and a cousin to King Louis XVI. But he actually supported the revolution and changed his name to Louis Égalité. He voted for the deaths of his cousin the king and his wife Marie Antoinette, but got guillotined himself pretty soon after that. So it goes. I am really intrigued by this life-size dummy board from the 1650s of a child holding a golf club and ball. I stumbled upon another Boudon. This shows some ships on the river Scheldt at Antwerp. There's the Grand Cascade at Tivoli again in the background. These are by a noted French romantic painter, Hubert Robert. That is a Francesco Guardi scene of the Piazza San Marco in Venice. Here in a Spanish Baroque dealer, they have a painting attributed to Giuseppe de Ribera, a true master of chiaroscuro. This one has been identified to be an authentic Murillo from 1645. That is the engagement portrait of Princess Margarita Gonzaga of Mantua's ruling family. The M.S. Rao dealer out of New Orleans, Louisiana has a mind-blowing gallery with works by two incredibly rare artists to be found on the market. This is one of them, a painting by Sir Winston Churchill. Yes, the legendary wartime British Prime Minister, arguably among the most influential figures of the 20th century, was himself an artist. He found painting to be an incredibly relaxing activity, and from a technical standpoint he got fairly good at it. This piece is a bit different from a lot of the others I've seen of his. He chose vivid colors and a particularly expressionistic style. It is a still life with aubergines and red peppers on a silver tray done in 1934, during his wilderness years not part of Parliament but still out there arguing for action against ever-rising fascism in Europe. The Churchill is juxtaposed with an artist who had a more so ambiguous relationship with fascism, Salvador Dali. This is a still life with two sacks and a bottle by none other than Vincent Van Gogh. I did not expect to see a painting by him on sale here. It is an earlier work by the emerging artist from 1884, certainly not his most interesting piece. At that time, he was creating simple yet emotive peasant scenes in his native Brabant. He did the Potato Eaters less than a year after this. This still life did sell here to a private collector for $4.75 million, so this may have been a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see this work in person. That's certainly not all. Here's a work by Lucas Cranach the Elder in his studio from the 1530s. It's a depiction of Moses and the Pillar of the Cloud. There's also a Diego Rivera mother and child painting from 1903. Here's a pastel of a girl playing the banjo by Mary Cassatt, an American-born impressionist. This is a rather rare early Paul Gauguin work, a flower still life from 1874. It would still be over a decade before he went to Pont-Aven for the first time. His later styles and artistic developments were much more intriguing, but that's still neat. This is a Camille Pissarro picture of the Pont Royal in Paris. This is a rare masterwork by Marinus van Reemswalde. A 16th century citizen of Antwerp would understand the satire behind these two ugly tax collectors, with their jewels strewn about the table going over the record books. It is placed next to a Renoir portrait of a young girl. This is Les Cyclerons by Marc Chagall. That's a gentle Renoir landscape. Here is a Claude Monet painting. It's a view of Giverny from 1886, so it's a scene he did during his early residency in the idyllic village where he would create his iconic garden. This is the Carnaval du Sage by René Magritte. As usual, his works are cloaked in mystery. And that's another Chagall for good measure. There are plenty of dining options here at TEFAF. Some bars and restaurants are placed right in between the galleries. These fish are just meters opposite from the Van Gogh. That is an extraordinary Orientalist frame from the early 1900s. This was a rediscovered masterpiece by Bartolomeo Manfredi. His works are a fusion of techniques employed by Caravaggio and Ribera. There's a tree by Alfred Sisley. And some still lifes by Renoir and Bernard. That's a 1920s depiction of a high-class hotel dance in Berlin by Willy Slüter. There's a Kieswendungen on the right and a Karel-Appel on the left. And that's The Crown Fool by Paul Klee. Here's a contemporary take on the 17th century Dutch flower painting at the center. The two flowers on the side look like they're exploding. Here's a small panel by Peter Paul Rubens of the Madonna of the Rosary. Here's a Frans Hals portrait of a man within a feigned oval. That's a little different from his usual portraits. This is kind of a trippy one. It's a self-portrait by Michiel Swerts, but he's holding a portrait of the Virgin Mary in front of him. This is an epic naval battle. It is one of the most outstanding works by Willem van de Velde the Younger, part of a series commissioned by Admiral Edward Russell in 1698 for his Chippenham Park estate in Cambridgeshire. It depicts the English fleet under his command just before the battles of Barfleur et Laogue against the French invasion fleet of Louis XIV. While the French inflicted damage, the Anglo-Dutch fleet was victorious in these battles and destroyed 15 French ships. That's a carefully composed landscape with riders by Albert Culp from the 1650s. This is considered to be among Meindert Hobbema's finest works, though it has the spontaneity of a sketch. David de Koninck was famous for his animal paintings. This one has a peacock, roosters, and rabbits. And there's a Heda Bouquet still life from 1642, accompanied by actual flowers. That makes for a wonderful tableau. Here's a work by Jan Brueghel the Younger, the eldest son of the Velvet Brueghel. He is best known for his innovative, scientifically based flower paintings like those of his father. This painting is based on an engraving of Pieter Brueghel the Elder's 7 Acts of Mercy, done by his son Pieter Brueghel the Younger. He did change it a bit by emphasizing the secular nature of the values of the 7 Acts of Mercy. Here is a 1597 luncheon on grass of an archduke near Brussels by Lucas van Valkenborsch. That is an awesome painting of the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Here, the Campanile of Venice is ominously illuminated by flares, documenting the scene when King Vittorio Emanuele II and Austro-Hungarian Emperor Franz Josef visited the city. It had been part of the Austrian Empire just 9 years prior. Here is a Titian painting on sale. That's remarkable. This was actually a compilation work between the great Titian and one of his assistants, Girolamo Dente. It is a Virgin and Child with St. Mary Magdalene in classic Titian style. And here's a work by the great Rococo Venetian master Tiepolo, the head of an Eastern gentleman with a mustache and turban. That bizarre scene is a 17th century painting of a famed 15th century engraving. Alsatian printmaker Martin Schongauer illustrated the famous scene of St. Anthony being swarmed by grotesque-looking demons. Each demon represents a certain type of temptation, but Anthony is steadfast in resisting all of them. This is an 1807 portrait by Francisco de Goya. Doña Maria Soledad Rocha Fernandez de la Pina was a lady-in-waiting to Queen Maria Luisa of Parma, and in this excellent portrait she stares right into the viewer's eye. Some galleries have their own backstage hangout rooms, which are often adorned by valuable art pieces. There's a Magritte painting in this one. Here's a pencil and watercolor sketch by J.M.W. Turner of the Splugen Pass in Switzerland. That is a majestic little landscape. Well, the show floor is about to close and I'm rushing to squeeze a few more things in. Honestly, one could spend every day of the fair in here and find new things all day long. I spotted another quintessential Frans Hals portrait. Johann Klaus Lew here looks like quite the distinguished gentleman. Here's a 1587 painting by Annibale Carracci of the Holy Family with infant St. John the Baptist. There's yet another Guardi Venetian scene. Here's an early 17th century Tower of Babel. This is an excellent work of Pieter Brueghel the Younger from 1627, of a raucous village festival. It is set on the day of St. George's Kermis, and the villagers can be seen dancing around the maypole. This is the interior of the Cathedral of Our Lady in Antwerp as it appeared in 1621. There are some authentic hellscapes done by followers of Hieronymus Bosch. These are a ton of fun. This one is a busy depiction of St. Christopher carrying Christ on his shoulders. According to legend, he was a giant, but his walk is surrounded by all sorts of insanity. And here's a chaotic Jan Steen tavern scene. He made lots of rather humorous genre paintings like this. This is kind of a weird painting. Not sure if it would qualify as trompe-l'œil or if it's just some sort of practical joke. It started out as just the portrait in 1655, but 25 years later someone flipped it on its side and painted a stormy ship scene around the head. This is a Paliotto, a silver altar screen from 18th century Palermo. There are ancient Greek and Roman sculptures just like what you'd find in a museum all up for grabs here, like these 2nd century Roman heads. This is a Catalan wood-carved Virgin in Majesty from the late 12th century. These are carved capitals from churches in southern France dating from the 1300s. That is a magnificent, finely decorated reliquary casket from Limoges, France, dated to the year 1200. Rushing over to lunch, I spotted an impressionist work in the corner of my eye. It turns out to be an Alfred Sisley scene from 1891. Below there's another cast of Henry Moore's Family Group. There's also a sublime Camille Pissarro picture from 1881. I also spotted a Camille Claudel sculpture. It's a bronze version of L'Abandon, a rather erotic work she created during the height of her relationship with Auguste Rodin. Those colossal Egyptian-inspired vases are awesome. Yeah, I'll have those, please. This is an epic tableau being shown literally behind bars from the showroom floor. It's a Velazquez and a Michelangelo. This is a bronze cast of Michelangelo's model for the Crucified Christ. He designed this crucifix during his latter years in Rome, based on conversations of salvation and the Passion with one of his patrons, the poet Vittorio Colonna. It is believed that those discussions led him to create this model crucifix with 4 nails. Previously, the nails in Christ's hands and feet were not shown, and in time that became the standard iconography for Spain and its colonies during the Baroque era. So the crucifix is joined by a genuine portrait by the great Diego Velazquez of Mother Jeronima de la Fuente from 1620. She was very influential and went on missions to Mexico, and later established the first nunnery in the Philippines. Notice what she is holding. That is a model of Michelangelo's corpus just like the one they have here, showing the direct connection and widespread influence of the Renaissance master's design. That's really awesome. There are centuries-old tapestries from Brussels and the Gobelins of Paris available. There are also lots of Orthodox icons from Eastern Europe and Russia. This 17th century Russian icon depicts the martyrs St. Floris and Loris. These marbles were modeled off of Canova sculptures. This is a coral tapestry, embroidered with coral beads and silver threads from 18th century Sicily. That is a piece by Walter Sauer, a Belgian symbolist known as the Painter of the Eternal Woman. There's a 1340s sculpture of the Virgin and Child likely made in nearby Liège somewhere in the Meuse Valley, and a southern Netherlandish crucifixion painting from the 1500s. Here's an authentic piece of Canterbury Cathedral in England. It's a Principal Springer mullion from the south window of that most storied cathedral added during the 15th century reconstructions. They rebuilt the whole nave over the course of a century. So I hope you enjoyed that look at the amazing museum quality art pieces available for purchase here at TEFAF 2025. If you did, then please check out my other videos featuring museums, art exhibitions, historic monuments, and more. I do have other episodes on TEFAF Maastricht 2025, including one focused on modern and contemporary art, another highlighting these special exhibits and antique books. I also have a full tour video if you want to get the full experience. Those are all linked in the description. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching!